Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with life coach Cindie Chavez. Today is Wednesday, July the 1st, 2020, first day of July, 4 p.m. New York time, and wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And Cindie, I've been telling everybody else, but I'll let you know the app is half released. We got the versions for the PC and Mac done, still working on the big ones, which are the Android and iPhone versions. And I think I actually figured something out that's been kind of haunting me for about the last month. I'm not sure. I figured it out about 5 minutes before the show, so I haven't tested it yet. You get into that high vibe place, and all of a sudden stuff opens up, and that's what happens when I'm getting ready to do a show, right? So
right. Oh,
yeah.
That's great.
I don't know if it's true, but it would make sense that the thing I thought of is true because it's always little simple things that we overlook. And
Yes.
that's what this one is. This is a little simple thing that's very easy to overlook. So
well,
crossing my fingers and toes.
Yeah, let's hope. And I hadn't thought about it until right before the show when we had the little what's going on moment.
Yeah. We had our own little moment here. It was crazy.
Right, that Mercury's in retrograde. And I don't, some people say, oh, I don't buy into that. But there is an idea that when Mercury is retrograde, that there are a lot of communication problems and electronic problems, and astrologers will tell you not to sign contracts during that time because of these kind of communication mix-up. And because Mercury rules communication, most of our communication now is digital, right? Virtual, online, telephones, electronic stuff. And a bunch of people in my online room that I run were all complaining about it, saying they could not believe how many things were going wrong with computers and with, different things. And I told them that Saturday, my husband was working outside and he opened the door and I was in the back of the house and he yelled to me, he said, "Is Mercury in retrograde?" And I said, "Yep." And then there were a string of words I won't repeat. And he had been outside. He was listening to his earbuds. He was working in the yard with the new weed eater mower, something that takes batteries that, these batteries cost $100 a piece.
Oh my.
It was almost brand new. The battery died. Then the earphones went out. Then something else stopped working. And then the computers. And it was like, oh my goodness. So sometimes, even though that feels like a real drag to have things not working, the way I tend to look at it is kind of like, oh well, Mercury's in retrograde. I'm not going to get too worried about this. Like, it'll all pan out, instead of being super frustrated, even though it's super frustrating.
It is. It's very frustrating. But like you say, you can always turn it into a beach day, or you can turn it into a park day or something like that.
Just say, you know what, I'm going to walk away from this right now. And that's what a couple of people in my room actually said that they did, is when their computer or whatever just started, they said, okay, I'm going to walk away from this. And then, like you said, you walk away and you cool off a little bit and then come back and then things start to work out. So life on Earth. Welcome to Earth.
I remember one time about 2 years ago, we did a show about Mercury retrograde because I was, not really a convert. And by the end of the show, I was largely convinced, not entirely. But the thing that has kind of held me back all these years is when I looked more closely, I found that Mercury is in retrograde about a third of the time. I said, I'm not sure I'm willing to give up that much of my time to being frustrated by electronics. So I think I'm going to rethink this a little bit.
Yeah, a few times a year, Mercury is in retrograde for a few weeks. But one of the things that is good to remember is the retrograde, the RE at the beginning of retrograde. It means that Mercury seems to be moving backwards. Of course, it's not, but it's just in line with the other planets. So words that start with RE, like review, relax, and a lot of times if I'm working on a project, I take that time to not launch something new, but to go back and do the review of it, do some editing, figure out how I can make it better. It's like a very chill time to do things like that. And then I always joke that, reboot is one of those words too.
Yep. This is
Right
true.
before about an hour and a half ago, the printer was like, "What's wrong with the printer now?" And my husband said, "Did we try turning it on and turning it back off?" Because
Little things, right?
the tech joke is, have you turned it off and turned it back on again?
Oh,
Sometimes
yes.
that's all it takes, right? Reboot it.
It's true. I mean, it's the tech advisor's best friend. Reboot the computer. It'll fix all kinds of stuff.
Right? I don't do it often enough. I don't reboot my computer often enough, and I also don't like restart my phone, like turn it off completely. And
It's
sometimes,
less important with a phone, but it is important with any electronic device.
yeah,
They're happier. They operate better when they're starting from scratch.
every once in a while I'll realize my phone's a little weird, and I'll think, gosh, I don't think I've turned it off for like 2 months or something. So I'll restart it and everything's better.
Yeah.
I have to keep that in mind with our new app coming out. I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited too. I'll be really excited when I get the Android and iPhone versions out because those are the really, really big ones.
Right.
But as you were saying that Mercury in retrograde is an optical illusion, which it is, something was occurring to me as you said that. I realized, well, that's not the only illusion we deal with. Time and space is an illusion,
Right.
you know? I mean, that alone should tell you something.
We were talking about that last week, right? We were talking about the idea that somebody was we had a conversation going around like signs and synchronicities and
Hmm.
all these things, and then we were just talking about like creating something in the future, and we said, well, I know what it was. The whole conversation was about manifesting something instantly,
Oh, yes.
because somebody asked a question. At the end of the question, it was like, I want to know how to manifest instantly. And
Right.
we discovered at the end of the conversation, well, if time is not linear and everything is really happening at once, then we are actually manifesting everything instantly.
This
We
is
just don't
true.
experience it for 25 years.
It is absolutely true. In
Yeah.
fact, yesterday, Dan Mangena and I, with Alex watching on kind of in astonishment, she was having trouble, I think, keeping up with all of our thought patterns. But Dan and I were doing a thing about the nature of time because he had expressed something last Thursday that is a very common thing to express. Most of the great teachers in this field have used this idea. Neville Goddard, who we did books on, expressed this idea: the idea that all creation has already been completed, and that whenever we are manifesting something, we're not truly creating it, we're summoning it, we're calling it to ourselves. And I've always had a little bit of a resistance to that. I got to thinking about it after he made his comment last week and expressed right there on the spot that that's not the way I really think about it. And he was curious, but it was at the end of the show. You know how that goes. You're
Right.
running out of time, So I kind of held it over to this week. And as I thought about it, I understood why I was so confused about it. Why I was so confused is because all of our language is based on time.
Yes.
All of our words, all of our sentences, they're based on time. We express
Right.
things in terms of time. And I know that Daniel and the teachers and so forth, they're all trying to express something that is a non-time concept, but they're limited by the fact that we have to express things in terms of time. So I pointed out, well, it would therefore be just as accurate or just as inaccurate to say everything is about to be created rather than everything has already been created. It's just coming at it from two different directions. You're basically trying to express now.
Yeah. Right. Right. You're right about that. That's like the language method E prime, where you
Mhm.
don't ever use the verb to be. So there's no I am, there's no, and it's very weird, but it's very cool.
Well, it's also
So
very difficult for sentence structure. I mean,
it
you
can
try to
be,
express something without that, and okay, how does this sentence go together again?
but you're right, like tense. That is
Yeah,
a huge part of language, is the
sure.
tense. And so if we take that out, everything is happening now.
And to make it even more confusing, we understand now in terms of a timeline.
Yeah, right.
So even, I mean, we know what we're trying to talk about. We
Hmm.
know we're talking about this instant that is timeless,
Yeah,
but all of our words describe it in a way that involves time.
right. Because if we say now, we are talking about a time on a timeline that's not
Right.
then and it's not later, it's now.
Yeah, it's right in the middle. The past is over there, future's over there.
Right. It is.
Yeah,
It is hard to get your mind around the concept of time being non-linear, for
it
sure.
really is.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was digging around looking at things to talk about. I saw an interesting post. It started off really, really well, and then it kind of got a little bit disappointing for me.
Okay.
But I thought it would be a good talking point for us because Wednesdays, of course, are relationship Wednesdays. And this
Yeah.
one is ultimately all about two kinds of relationships. So
Okay.
I'll read it and you'll hear the first part sounds really good. It says, she says, I am resetting my manifestation technique starting with self love. I have never fully experienced self love, and being an LOA follower for more than 10 years now, this is the first time I want to do self love. That part sounds really good. This is the part where it starts to slide off a little bit. I want to do self love to manifest my soulmate back from a third party situation.
Mm.
I'm scared and anxious all the time. I need big time support and good vibes and guidance from you all. Any suggestions to begin with? And that's her post on Facebook.
Well, the really great thing about this is that is the goal.
Yeah.
Not the end goal of getting someone back, but the
Right.
goal of self-love, the intention, I guess I should say, right?
Right.
And this is not the same situation, but I'm going to use it as an example that when I was in a relationship that wasn't working, a long-term relationship, a over 2-decade relationship, I recognized at some point that part of it had to do with my self-love or lack thereof. Now, if anybody would have asked me, I would have said, oh, of course I love myself, right? And I did a lot of things that people would point to and say self-love. I took good care of myself, right? But the thing that I wasn't doing was I was allowing someone to treat me in a way that wasn't, especially great. Like, I often use this example. It's like if I had at one time I had a little dog that I love so much. If you see us on video, you see my little dog in the picture in the background. If a neighbor would have come over to introduce themselves and then come in and then said some crappy thing to my dog, I would have said, you're going to have to go. And yet, like, this person in my life would say crappy things to me, right? Why was I tolerating something that I wouldn't even let someone get away with my dog?
Right.
And so here's what I am getting to the point. So here's what I did. I just started making some boundaries. So this is self-love. Boundaries are an act of love, because boundaries at their very basic is just to tell someone what's okay and what's not okay, right? Very simple. And to communicate that to whoever it is that you need to communicate it to with love and with compassion, but just knowing this isn't about you and your behavior, but it's about me and what I need. And it's not okay for whatever it is. It's not okay for you to speak to me that way. It's not okay for you to call me after 10 at night, whatever it is.
Right.
When you start putting those boundaries into effect, when I started putting those boundaries into effect, it did not sit well with the other party. And they decided they were done. They did not want to be in a relationship where there was equanimity, where there was equality, where we were both treating each other with kindness and respect, right? And so I say this to the person asking this question or asking for help, is that when you start giving yourself the self-love, when you start giving yourself the love, the cherishing, the respect, the nurturing that you actually think you want to come from outside of you, from that other person or people, when you start giving it to yourself, it will start showing up from other people. It might not show up from that other specific person that you're wanting it from. But at that point, you're not going to care, because you are going to be so loved up from loving yourself and from the universe reflecting that love back to you from other people. And maybe either from other romantic suitors, from other close friends, from neighbors, from people in your life. That love will come shining back at you, and you'll feel no deficit of love. You won't feel like, oh, I need this person back so much, because you'll be full. You'll be full of love from yourself and from everyone around you, or from a good amount of people around you. And the people that don't want to give you that love, it won't matter. It really won't matter. I know that might be hard to believe when your heart feels broken and you're really wanting someone back. But I always ask this question. I've asked this question to myself during that time. And that was 25 years ago. No, 15 years ago, right? So it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
But now I am so loved and appreciated in a wonderful relationship. I would never go back to that.
Yeah.
And that's the question I asked myself at the time.
That's a great question.
I was asking myself the same questions this person is asking. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get him to care about me again?
Yeah.
How do I fix this? What do I change? What can I do? What kind of support can I get? And then I asked myself the question, the magic question. Why do I want to be with someone who doesn't want to be with me?
Yeah, well, there's that one too.
Why do I want to be with this person who'd rather be over there with that other person or whatever? And we didn't have a third party in our situation, but it was like, they clearly have said they don't want to be with me anymore. Why do I want that?
Mm-hmm.
And then it hit me. I asked myself, what do I want? I want somebody who's wild about me. I want somebody who wants to be with me all the time. I want somebody who loves me and cherishes me and respects me and thinks I'm brilliant. You know, that's what I want.
Sure.
And that's what I have.
Yeah.
And it's out there for you. Whoever you are, you're looking, it's out there for you. And it's probably not that guy that got away or that girl that got away. It's probably not, because if they wanted to be with you, they'd be with you. That might sound hard and that might not feel good to hear, but.
Well, even if it does turn out to be that is the person, it's not going to work until you change how you feel about yourself.
Yes.
And that means working on yourself.
Right. Well, when you recognize that you are whole, right? You know, that whole Jerry Maguire movie with the "You complete me," you know, that was such a famous line in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there is no one that's going to complete you.
Right.
You are complete. So when you realize that you're whole and complete, then you can meet another person who is whole and complete. And the two of you whole people can make up a whole couple. But you don't need someone to complete you. And I think that generally when someone's trying to get someone back, that's what's happening, is they feel something's missing. We have memories of what it was like in the good times. And, you know, most relationships, even terrible relationships, usually have a moment or two that are great.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have any kind of duration at all. They disappear quickly.
Right. And so, you know, we hold on to those things sometimes. And it's all about you recognizing your wholeness, you being willing to love yourself, you being willing to recognize that you can have an amazing life all by yourself. It doesn't mean that that's what you want, but when you get to the place where you're loving your life so much and you're recognizing your wholeness, you don't feel like you have to have someone else complete you. That's usually when the person shows up.
That's it. That's exactly what happens. Yeah. In fact, I love the way you phrased it. I'm not sure if I could repeat exactly what you said, but the gist of it was that when you do the work, when you start loving yourself the way you would want somebody else to love you, when you start treating yourself the way you would want somebody else to treat you, and when you recognize that you haven't been treating yourself that way and that this is actually something you deserve from yourself, an interesting thing happens about these SPs that are out there. They suddenly become less interesting.
Yeah.
That's what I found. I found that out in ways that kind of surprised me. But the more that I ended up growing, the more that I ended up being the person that I needed to be to myself, the less interested I was in the ones from the past. They just, it was kind of like they almost faded away in my memory. I mean, they didn't. I remember who they are. It's just all the charge that was attached to them, all of the strong feeling, that desperate feeling of, oh yes, like you say, that person completes me, all that kind. It went away because I was completing myself, and so that need wasn't there anymore.
That's what when I went through my divorce, it was a really, you know, all these people say, oh, we had a friendly divorce or an amicable divorce, whatever. Yeah, no, I didn't have that. And I wish I could say I did, but it wasn't. It was nasty.
I always wonder about the people who say that, but that's another topic. We'll get to that one another day.
Actually, no, I actually can say that I coached a couple through a divorce that had long-term marriage, college age, I think, children. And they recognized that for the, you know, 10 years prior that they were just friends, but not, they didn't have romance. And they had different goals in life. Like they just weren't, it wasn't working. And
they had grown in different directions. So
and they are both still friends.
Mm-hmm.
They are both remarried and very happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so I did see they had that, but I don't see it too often. Right?
That's reassuring to know that exists, though. I mean, I've seen too much of the other. So
right, it can happen. And you know, but with me, I felt like I went through a phase where I didn't care if I ever, you know, had a relationship with another man again. You know, right? Sure. It didn't last too long. But what I decided to do, and part of it was because I have people in my family, women in my family that have married and remarried and remarried and remarried. Mm-hmm. And I realized that people, you know, they get a divorce or a breakup and their heart is broken and they right away get into another relationship, which often feels good because they're lonely and they're sad and it feels good to be, you know, in love and having fun and all of that. And it's just a rebound relationship that often doesn't work because there was no real foundation of friendship or anything there. It was just happened fast. Yeah. I did not want to have that experience. So I made all my friends promise me that I said, look, if I come and tell you that I've went on a date and this guy is the best thing since sliced bread, like you just tell me no, like don't let me do this. And of course, most of my friends were trying, you know, wanting me to date because they wanted me to have a relationship. But I spent quite a few years finding out who I was again. Yeah. I wrote a book, I remodeled a house, I took classes, I went back to school. I did all these things and I did them for me. And you know, it was at that point. It was at that point where I was starting to feel really good about myself, about my accomplishments, about my life, about things going on, that he appeared. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do any kind of online dating or anything like that. I just met him somewhere and it was meant to be. And it's been almost 10 years. So I think that the key there, because I've looked back, I'm a relationship coach. So I'm like, okay, sure, I'm in a really great relationship. So I can tell you how we work through things and how we navigate a great relationship. But I would look back in the beginning and think, but how did I get here? What did I do? What happened before that to go from the real pain of heartbreak and breakup to something else? What was in between? And that's what it was. Yeah. And I can point the self-love pointer at all those things that I did.
Absolutely.
There was an element of, I remember decorating a bedroom and realizing that I wasn't asking anyone else what color should it be or what should it, I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this bedroom for me. Mm-hmm. Like, and there was kind of a turning point there. I was redecorating a house that was for sale and the realtor was saying, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And none of the things she was wanting me to do were things I wanted to do. And I just decided, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. This is, I'm going to really enjoy myself and find out what I like. So if you do that, I think that's a big key. Respect. Respecting your own opinion, respecting your own thoughts, trusting your ideas. Those are all things that even a lot of times when people say they love themselves, they don't do those things.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, seriously, you would think that people who are deliberately focused on improving their relationship with themselves would have that part ironed out. But the truth of the matter is we all work on different things in a different order. We prioritize things differently. We think about things differently. And it's no wonder we end up kind of skipping areas, not intentionally, but we end up skipping areas.
Well, you know, any coach will tell you, most coaches are familiar with the word gremlin. It's a word that we give to that little voice in your head. Some people call it the inner critic, right? It's the voice that's always demeaning you or telling you that you can't trust yourself or whatever. And we all go through that because we grow up hearing lots of voices. And even if we had the most loving and wise and kind parents, some of us did not, some of us did. There's still lots of other influences in our life. There were neighbors and teachers and relatives and people that had ideas and things we heard on TV, and lots of information coming at us about how things should be and how we should be and how what makes something right and wrong and perfect and trashy and whatever. And so we've got all these voices in our head, and it's when we learn to hear the voice of ourself, what I call my higher, wiser self, then we can start, recognizing self-love isn't just about going and getting a manicure and a massage.
It's a good start, but you don't want to stop there.
Well, self-care, that's pampering, and a lot of people stop there. And hey, I like to be pampered as much as anybody, but there's another level of self-love, and it's the intention of what we think about ourselves.
Because you do that a whole lot more in your day than you do lying on the massage table. I mean, how often does that happen? Not all that often, but thinking about yourself every single day, practically.
So the support that I would throw out there, we talk about it a lot for anybody though that's working on self-love, is mirror work.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, there's science behind why this works. When we talk about mirror work, we are literally talking about looking into a mirror, looking into your own eyes and saying, I love you. You did a great job today. You did the best you could today. Hey, today, even on the worst days, right? It's like, hey, today was a hard day, but you made it. So you're giving yourself a pep talk. Like, I often think it's like the way you would talk to a child that was having a bad day or a good day.
And it feels weird the first time you do it. So weird that the first day I couldn't do it for more than 3 seconds.
It probably feels weird the first week or so.
Well,
right?
Well, the first day was
you
tough.
being like, I'm not going to give up, but this is terrible. I'm not going to give up.
Well, I almost did give up that first day. And the second day was about twice as easy. You're right, after about a week, it was no big deal at all. It did take a few days to kind of shed that old skin of, oh God, this feels so creepy.
So there's science that shows that hearing someone's voice it affects a different part of our brain than reading, let's say, a text message. And this is why, if you've got, I certainly have offered plenty of support and encouraging messages via text message. I'm not saying not to do that.
Sure.
But if you can call, it's even better, right? Because it actually is the brain of the person you're speaking to is processing it in a different way, and it's in a way that supports them better. It's in a way where empathy is involved, which doesn't come across in a text. No matter how hard we try, it just doesn't. Our brain looks at it differently when we're reading words than when we're hearing words. So it's always better if we can. And then the mirror work, we're speaking out loud. So we're not only hearing our own voice saying, it's like, wow, our part of our brain is like, oh, wow, we love ourselves.
How about that?
Hey, and then there are mirror neurons in the brain. So when a baby is first born, they have the ability to only see a very short distance, right? Like they say that a newborn baby can see the distance from nursing at the mother's breast to the mother's face. So maybe 10 inches, 8 inches, 12 inches, whatever, a little space. And then everything beyond that's kind of blurry.
Right.
So for their first weeks, their vision is a little bit short, very short. And then it gets wider. But what they can do even at that time of being such a newborn, is they are recognizing their mother's face, and they start to recognize other faces, and they recognize facial expression. And especially in little girls, it's a little bit more, brain scientists say, but they recognize whether the expression on someone's face is pleased or not pleased.
Yeah.
And so right away, we want to please our parents, and we are very, very perceptive, even as babies, about their facial expression, whether they are pleased or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I say this just because, those mirror neurons are very powerful. So think about when someone eats a lemon and their face scrunches up from the sour flavor, and someone's watching them and they make the same face. Or how about when someone yawns?
Yeah.
You see them and then you start yawning too.
Right.
That is all attributed to this same thing going on. So when we look into a mirror and see our own face, that part of our brain is activated. It's the part that has empathy. It's the part that can be there with someone in whatever they're going through. It's not the same as sympathy, right?
It's interesting that you say that too, because as I was thinking about my own mirror work, particularly that first week, I made it a point. I didn't have a clear idea why I made it a point, but I made it a point to look in the mirror and smile at myself.
Yeah, yes.
That smile made it, first of all, it made it a whole lot easier to do the mirror work. But secondly, that smile gave me that reassurance that you're talking about. It was either
Right.
the face of approval or the face of disapproval, and the smile was a face of approval, and it felt good.
I'm so
So
glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
that's really important. I actually told myself that, like, when you're out somewhere and you see someone and you recognize them, oftentimes you'll both smile and sort of what I would call your face will light up, right? It's
Right.
like, hey, how are you?
Exactly.
And so I told myself, whenever you see yourself in a mirror, you should do that.
Mhm.
You should say, hey, good to see you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that does sound, I mean, you're giggling because it sounds so uncomfortable, and at first it is uncomfortable, but it really does pay off in a
Yeah.
big way. I mean, you talked about 10 minutes ago about those voices that have been in our heads for years, and they come from a variety of different sources, and they keep replaying over and over again. One of the most wonderful things, it's actually the reason why I chose to do mirror work in the first place, is when those voices go away.
Yeah.
They go away, and if you keep going with the mirror work, they go away permanently.
Well, I remember this because it's been well over a year, maybe close to 2. But I had heard Jack Canfield, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I had heard Jack Canfield say that the negative self-talk, the negative mental chatter in his head, that when he started doing mirror work for, I don't know, I think it was 25 days, that it stopped. And we were on air one day talking about mental chatter, and you were saying that you think that that's really that was probably the worst thing for you when you first got into LOA, is just recognizing that there was this negative mental chatter going on all the time, and that it's draining and it's hard to deal with. And I remembered hearing him say that. And so we started talking about mirror work, and that's when you said, you know what, I'm going to do it, because I will try anything like this if there's a promise that maybe it will stop the mental chatter. Now, I remember you reporting back, and I still use your story sometimes with clients. I do, because it was something that you said that was so powerful. You said the mental chatter is like the volume on it has turned down.
Yes.
And you said it's almost like when there's a TV on in the other room, and you can hear it, but it's not even interesting enough for you to try and hear what it's actually saying. It's just like, oh yeah, the TV's on. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a great way to describe it, because it's not like you'll automatically forget that anyone ever said any of those things to you.
No.
I have had people tell me of things that parents and teachers and this person, that person told them that were, to me, horrifying. To be an 11-year-old and have your teacher say, like, you'll never amount to anything or something like that. It's like, oh my goodness, really? But lots of people have had experiences like that, and they hear that voice over and over. It's not that you'll forget that anyone ever said it. I mean, that would be the best case scenario, and maybe that happens. but it's that you just don't care anymore. You don't have an emotional charge to it. It's like the volume is so far down. It's just, it's chatter. It's just, and you're not focused on it. And I still get excited when I think about that result you had, because that's amazing.
I get excited too for that exact reason. And not only did the volume go down, after about 30 days, it was nearly gone. At 40 days, it was gone.
Gone. Yeah.
And I think I went 50 days and then stopped for a few months, and it started to trickle back a little bit. So I started doing the mirror work again. It went away really quickly the second time because I had laid the groundwork, so to speak. And now I do it as needed. You know how you'll see a doctor and they'll say, take this as needed. Well, that's
Right.
what I do. I do it as needed. And in fact, I started this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that. I did a variation on it. And it's been my daily variation during this time. It's not just looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. It's looking in the mirror, smiling, and celebrating life. Yes, I love you. You are fabulous. I mean, just really going overboard, completely over the top. And I actually time myself now because
Oh yeah. How long are you doing this for?
this new version I'm doing for 1 minute. That's it. Just 1 minute, because 1 minute is exhausting.
Right. Right.
Throwing
So,
that much energy into it, that much enthusiasm into it.
but when you think about so many other, I don't even know what to call them, practices, I guess, so many other practices that we do, to honor ourselves, to grow ourselves, to, bring more peace into our life, whatever they are. Some of them are 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, right? So it's like 1 minute to recognize that you can have a huge change in your life. And when you have that huge change, as within, so without, it's
Right.
everything outwardly starts to change as well. The way people perceive you change. The way people treat you changes. For 1 minute a day.
Yeah, that's a good trade. It's a
Right.
really good trade.
Right.
And it has an amazing, when you do the overboard thing, it has an unexpected effect. It raises you to high vibe very fast.
And you said it lasts for a while.
It does. It'll last at least 5 to 10 minutes and usually longer. And you just feel that buzz throughout that time. Now, maybe if you're starting from a really low place, you're depressed or you're angry or, in one of the really low vibration places, maybe you'll only get a buzz for, 10, 15 seconds afterward. But if you keep doing it, it increases. It increases over time, and it does it fairly quickly. I mean, a week or two later, all of a sudden, you're really experiencing that high vibe that lasts. And you say, whoa, this feels good.
Well, part of what you're doing, we were talking about the brain, and you start to grow new neural connections.
Yes.
So it's like anything. If you think about something that you've learned that was like learning how to type, it's slow at first, make a lot of mistakes, and now most of us just, I mean, I type really fast and I don't even think about it. Like it's just happening, right?
Right.
Because those neural connections have grown and they just wire and fire automatically now. It's like driving somewhere that you know how to get there. It's just easy. You don't have to think too much about it. So when you start doing this kind of mirror work every day, you actually start growing those neural connections. And then pretty soon, like you said, even when you let it go for a while, as soon as you started doing it again, it's kind of like they say about riding a bike, right? It's like riding a bike. And you get right back on and it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know how to do this. That's that neural connection thing in your brain. You've already formed all those connections. And the other good thing about it is that we form connections for bad habits too.
Oh, yes.
But when we start to break those habits, those connections unconnect, they disconnect from each other, and they do not fire together anymore. So,
and as we establish the new connections, they start creating connections we like. That's one of the unexpected benefits of doing the mirror work. You do the mirror work long enough, and I'm not sure how long enough is, but let's just say about as long as I did it. How about that? And
just go for 30 days at first.
Yeah, 30 days is a nice round number. You certainly are going to experience a change in 30 days if you go the full 30. But after that 30-day period is up, you're going to find something interesting. You're going to find that some of your other behavior patterns with other people change. And not because you intended them to change, not because you set an intention, said, I want the law of attraction to, no, it's just you started changing the way that you were thinking about yourself through the mirror work, and it starts expressing itself. You start expressing yourself differently as a result when you're dealing
Correct.
with others.
And
And you don't even know you're doing it. You just see the result.
I think it's interesting that it's mirror work if using an actual mirror, because I always say that all of our relationships are mirrors, right?
True,
Like
yes.
everything happening outside of us is just a mirror to what's going on inside of us. And so, yeah, you're right. It will, everything will change. And the thing I always think about with mirror work is, like some people like to write and some people don't. But even for people that really like to write, it's like, okay, writing in a journal 3 pages a day or 30 minutes a day or whatever, it takes some consistency and dedication. And yet, mirror work, I mean, most of us are in a mirror every morning when we're brushing our teeth, washing our face, whatever. We're there in a mirror, putting in our contact lenses, whatever. I mean, and we're already there,
right? And
usually it's in a private space. And this is only going to take a minute, and it doesn't have to make noise, because the first time you did the over the top version, Louise was asleep and you didn't want to wake her. So you
That's right. It was a quiet celebration.
People that practice magic, there are certain incantations that are meant to be vibrated, which means you're really pulling it up from deep in your belly and projecting. And so you're really using volume. And people will tell you that practice that way, that if you can't do it, because some people are like, I live with roommates, or like people that won't understand, or they won't think this is cool or whatever. They say, well, that's okay. You can still say it to yourself in your imagination, but you have to imagine that you're saying it with great power and force. See, so you can use your imagination that way to bring the power and the volume, like you're talking about. Yes, just really celebrating. You don't have to make the noise. So if that's an issue, if the volume is an issue, it doesn't have to be. Uh-oh, and Walt, you are frozen. I don't see you. And I don't hear you.